My name is Nora Lawson. I'm 25, married to a man I once thought was everything I needed. We'd been together since college. Mark was charismatic, confident, and just enough older than me that it felt like he had life figured out. I mistook that confidence for maturity. What happened last fall made me realize how wrong I'd been. It started with a dull ache in my lower back. I was at work, sitting at my desk, clicking through endless spreadsheets and replying to emails when the pain settled there, deep and insistent. At first, I chalked it up to bad posture or maybe the fact that I'd been sleeping restlessly. I even joked about it to my coworker, pretending it was nothing. That night, I mentioned it to Mark while we were eating dinner. He was barely paying attention, his eyes fixed on his phone like always. I think I pulled something, I said, wincing as I shifted in my seat. He didn't even look up. Probably. You always get worked up over little things. That stung, but I let it go. I always did. Mark had this way of dismissing things that made you feel ridiculous for even bringing them up. I used to tell myself it was just his way, that he didn't mean to be so cold. But looking back, it was a pattern, me expressing pain and him making it about my overreacting. By Friday, the pain had moved down my left leg, like lightning every time I tried to walk. I couldn't stand upright for more than a few minutes without needing to sit down. It felt like something was pinching a nerve, but deeper, more terrifying. My muscles were starting to spasm uncontrollably, and the nausea was constant. I texted my sister, Kayla, that afternoon. Hey, I know you're busy, but I'm really not doing well. I can't walk properly. Can you come by? I just need help with a few things. Maybe picking up groceries? 2 hours later, she responded, Kayla, ugh, I'm slammed today. Can Mark help? That was the problem. Mark wouldn't help. Saturday, I tried to get out of bed and collapsed. Just fell onto the floor like a puppet whose strings had been cut. I screamed, not out of pain, though it was blinding, but out of panic. My body wasn't working the way it was supposed to. I called out for Mark. He was in the living room, gaming with his headset on. I knew he heard me, but he didn't come. Eventually, I dragged myself across the carpet, 15 feet, that felt like a marathon. When I finally reached the couch, I grabbed the edge and tried to pull myself up. He looked down at me, finally noticing. His face didn't register concern, only mild annoyance. You really need to calm down. You're making this way more dramatic than it needs to be. I begged him to take me to the hospital. I was sobbing, sweating, shaking. I'm not your chauffeur, he muttered, turning back to his screen. I don't remember much of the next few hours. Everything was a blur of pain and crawling and the overwhelming feeling that something was very, very wrong. I made it to the bathroom and threw up. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. At some point during the night, I blacked out on the hallway floor. When I came to, the sun was coming through the blinds. I was on the couch, though I didn't remember getting there. My head throbbed, my mouth was dry, and I could barely move. Mark wasn't home. I fumbled for my phone and called 911. I had to. My limbs felt like they didn't belong to me anymore. The paramedics arrived quickly. I remember the flash of lights, their calm voices, the questions I could barely answer. I was in too much pain to respond properly. They got me on a stretcher, and one of them said, she's tachycardic, get a line in. Then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital room. The walls were a sterile pale blue. Machines beeped softly beside me. There was M4 in my arm, and my body felt like it had been lit on fire. But that's not what shook me. There was a man sitting beside the bed, wearing a police uniform. He was holding a clipboard and flipping through what I realized was my chart. Miss Lawson, he said, looking up from the papers, can I ask you a few questions about what led to your condition? My heart rate spiked. I could hear the machine next to me beeping faster. Why? Why is there an officer here? My voice cracked, barely a whisper. He looked at me with a mixture of concern and something else. Suspicion? We have a report from the EMS that your injuries may not be accidental. Do you remember what happened? I blinked. It was my back. I've been in pain for days. No one would help me. I collapsed. That's all. He paused, then gently turned the chart toward me. I saw a note in bold. Multiple contusions inconsistent with a simple fall. Possible neglect. And just like that, the ground beneath my life began to shift. The word neglect echoed in my mind long after the officer left the room. A nurse came in not long after, cheerful in the way medical staff are trained to be. She checked my vitals, adjusted my floor, and asked if I needed anything. I wanted to ask her about the bruises. I wanted to say, "Do you think someone did this to me? Do you think I did this to myself?" But I couldn't get the words out. Later, the doctor came in. Dr. Halvorsen, calm, older, the kind of person you trust just by the way they enter a room. He explained what had happened in soft, careful tones. "You were severely dehydrated, Nora. Your sodium levels were dangerously low. We also found signs of nerve compression, likely due to a ruptured disc pressing against your spinal cord. That's what caused the paralysis and the pain." He paused before continuing. "But there are also significant bruises on your arms, your back, and one on your side that looks like it was caused by blunt force." "I fell," I whispered. He nodded slowly, but he didn't look convinced. "Okay, but if there's anything else you want to tell us, you can. This is a safe space." I closed my eyes. I didn't want to talk. Not yet. They kept me in the hospital for 3 days. Kayla never visited. Mark came once, for less than 10 minutes. He stood by the door, arms crossed, as if entering the room too far would infect him with inconvenience. "You really made a scene," he muttered. "Do you know how much the ambulance ride is going to cost?" I didn't respond. When he left, the nurse came in and gave me a small envelope. "Someone dropped this off for you," she said. It was a folded note in Kayla's handwriting. "Sorry I couldn't come. Things are crazy right now. Hope you feel better soon. Kay." That was it. No offer to help me home. No question about how I ended up unconscious. Just a polite, empty apology. By the time I was discharged, I could walk, barely. They gave me a back brace and pain meds, a follow-up appointment, and a stack of paperwork. The hospital's social worker asked if I had a safe place to go. I said yes. I lied. When I stepped through our front door, the silence in the house felt heavier than it ever had before. Mark didn't come out to greet me. I found him in the den, watching TV, a bag of chips balanced on his stomach. He looked at me, nodded once, and went back to his show. "Not are you okay? Not how are you feeling?" Just a nod. "Can you help me with my bag?" I asked, motioning to the overnight tote slung across my shoulder. He sighed. "You managed to get it in here, didn't you?" I stood there for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. I went to bed without dinner. Getting up the stairs took 10 minutes. Every step felt like a betrayal my body was committing against me. That night, lying awake, staring at the ceiling, I realized something terrifying. If I got sick again, if I collapsed again, no one would help me. Not my husband. Not my sister. I was alone. And then, around 2 a.m, my phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. "You don't deserve this. I saw what happened. You're not crazy. Please talk to me." My chest tightened, because I recognized the number. It belonged to Ellie, Mark's ex. The woman everyone called unstable. The woman he said had made up stories. And now she was reaching out to me. I stared at Ellie's text for a long time. "You don't deserve this. I saw what happened. You're not crazy. Please talk to me." I hadn't seen or heard from her in over a year. Mark had always painted her as volatile, clingy, jealous, obsessive. When they split, he made it sound like a mutual decision, though the story always had gaps. I never pushed. I was too in love to see the cracks. And now here she was, texting me out of the blue. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. "Me, how do you know what happened?" Her response came instantly. "Ellie, I still talk to someone who works at the hospital. I wasn't snooping. She saw your name on the intake board and told me. I swear I'm not trying to stir up anything. But I know how this goes. It started the same way with me." A chill moved through my spine. "Me, what do you mean?" There was a long pause before her next message appeared. "Ellie, small things. That's how it begins. He makes you think you're overreacting. He ignores pain. Laughs when you cry. Twists everything until you think it's your fault." I dropped the phone. I didn't want to read more. I didn't want to see my life through someone else's rearview mirror. Because if she was right, I'd been living in something much darker than I was ready to admit. The next day, I forced myself to get up early and went to my follow-up appointment. Mark didn't offer to drive me. I didn't ask. I took a cab, silently rehearsing what I'd say to the doctor. Dr. Halvorsen greeted me with that same quiet calm. He reviewed my scans, confirmed the disc rupture, and said physical therapy would help. Then, gently, he said, "Did you think any more about what we discussed? About how you ended up with those bruises?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to say I'm clumsy or it was the fall. But the words didn't come. "I don't know," I whispered. "I don't remember everything. I was in a lot of pain, and no one helped me." He nodded slowly. That in itself is important. When I got home, Mark was gone. A note sat on the kitchen counter. "Out with Kyle. Don't wait up." I sat down at the table, the pain in my back flaring with every movement. I picked up my phone and texted Ellie. "Me, can we talk?" She called within minutes. Her voice was soft, hesitant. "Nora." "Yeah, I don't know why I'm calling." "I do," she said gently. We talked for over an hour. She told me how it had been for her, the gaslighting, the isolation, the way Mark had rewritten every fight, every incident, until she questioned her sanity. "He never hit me," she said. "But he didn't have to. He broke me down piece by piece until I didn't recognize myself. It was like listening to a stranger narrate my life. When I hung up, I sat in silence. My heart was pounding. My hands were cold. I didn't want to believe her. I wanted to think I had control. That Mark wasn't like that. That my pain had just been a medical issue. That everyone had just been busy, tired, distracted. But the bruises were real. So was the silence, and the officer who read my chart. That night, I finally opened the hospital discharge paperwork. I noticed something I hadn't seen before. There was a notation under additional concerns in the social workers section. Patient may be experiencing neglect or emotional abuse. Recommend follow-up. I stared at the words until they blurred, because someone had written it. Someone had seen it. I wasn't invisible. Not anymore. The next few days passed in a haze, half pain, half clarity. My body was healing slowly, but something else had started to unravel inside me. The house didn't feel like home anymore. Every corner held a memory that now seemed laced with something sinister. Mark rolling his eyes when I cried. Mark saying, "It's not that bad." Mark stepping over me as I lay sobbing on the bathroom floor. The bruise on my side had turned yellow, fading. But I couldn't stop touching it, as if reminding myself it was real, that I hadn't imagined at all. I started writing things down. Dates, details, the day I collapsed, the text from Kayla, the bruises, the nurse's face when she looked at my chart. I made a list of things Mark had said over the past year that I had dismissed. His comments about me gaining weight, about me getting too emotional lately, the way he once jokingly said, "You'd be useless in a real emergency." Then I remembered something that stopped me cold. 2 weeks before the incident, I'd gone to the ER for a panic attack. I thought I was dying, chest tight, heart racing, vision blurry. Mark didn't go with me. He said it was probably in my head, that I just needed sleep. At the hospital, they asked if I was under stress. I laughed. I didn't even mention him. Back then, I thought stress meant deadlines and to-do lists. Now I knew better. Ellie and I talked again that night. I told her about the ER visit. She was quiet for a long time before saying, "I went once too, for migraines and nausea. Turns out it was anxiety. I thought it was me, but it was him." Mark came home late. I was on the couch, pretending to be asleep. He reeked of beer and cheap cologne. The next morning, I finally did something I'd been too scared to do. I called the officer who had read my chart, Detective Harris. I found his card folded into the hospital file. When he picked up, I expected to stumble, to question myself. But I didn't. "I want to talk," I said. He scheduled a meeting at a nearby precinct, private room, no pressure. He was calm, patient. I told him everything. The pain, the hospital, Mark refusing to help. I showed him photos of the bruises I'd taken after being discharged. I gave him Ellie's number. He listened carefully, then asked, Do you feel safe in your home, Nora? I paused for too long. I don't know. That was enough for him to file an official report. You're not filing charges yet, he clarified, but we are documenting it. That's important. That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a cheap hotel under my maiden name. I turned off my phone. I didn't even pack a bag, I just left. And for the first time in what felt like years, I slept. The next morning, I woke to a voicemail from Mark. Where the hell are you? I've been calling all night. This is insane, Nora. You're acting like a crazy person. You left the house like a coward, just like your sister said you would. I replayed that line. Just like your sister said you would. Kayla, I hadn't thought of her as part of this, but something twisted in my stomach. Why did Mark know what she said? Why had she distanced herself so fast? I texted her one word. Me, why? She replied instantly. Kayla, I told him you needed help. I didn't know he'd twist it. Twist what? I asked her to meet me in person. She agreed. When we sat down at the cafe, she looked guilty, like a kid who knows she broke something and doesn't want to admit it. I told him you were struggling, that I was worried, she said. I didn't mean for it to turn into this. Into what? She hesitated, then lowered her voice. He said you were being manipulative, that you always use pain to get attention. He made me believe I was enabling you. I stared at her, heart pounding. You believed him? I don't know, she whispered. I wanted to. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just the pain that had been ignored. It was the pattern. I left the cafe shaking, Kayla's words swirling in my head like a hurricane. He said you were manipulative. That was the core of it, wasn't it? The label he had quietly wrapped around me, stitched into every word, every side eye, every time he made me question my own reality. Manipulative, emotional, dramatic. Words he never yelled, but always implied. I took the long way back to the hotel, walking aimlessly. It was cloudy and a few drops of rain began to fall, but I didn't care. The cold air felt cleansing, real. I hadn't brought many clothes with me, just what I had been wearing the day I left. I stared at myself in the hotel bathroom mirror, hollow-eyed, pale, a stranger looking back. I needed answers, not from Mark, not from Kayla, from me. I opened my journal, the one I hadn't touched in months. I flipped back, rereading entries. Most were vague. Tired complaints felt off today. Mark seemed annoyed again. Did I do something wrong? Then one entry caught my eye. Dated 6 months earlier. I told Mark I felt overwhelmed. He laughed and said I should try living a real life. I cried in the shower. I'm so tired of feeling crazy. Crazy. He had never called me that out loud, but I had written it like a fact. That night, I called Ellie again. What happened when you left? I asked her. She sighed. I stayed with a friend. Mark started messaging everyone, saying I was unstable. Told my job I needed time off for a breakdown. They believed him. For a while, I even believed him. I was silent. I had to start over, she added. But it was worth it, because now I can breathe again. Her voice cracked on that last sentence, and something inside me cracked too. The next morning, I met with Detective Harris again. I told him everything Ellie had shared. I gave him my journal, the photos, the texts from Kayla. He nodded slowly. This fits a pattern we've seen before. We're not pressing charges yet, but we're flagging it. Flagging it. He looked me in the eye, which means if anything else happens, anything will be ready. I left the precinct with a strange kind of relief. Not justice. Not yet. But something. That night, back at the hotel, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then curiosity got the better of me. I listened. It was Mark. His voice was calmer than before, almost tender. Nora, hey, I've been thinking. Maybe I didn't handle things well. Maybe I wasn't supportive enough. I talked to Kayla. She said you're going through something. Just come home, okay? Let's work through this. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone to my ear, heart pounding. And then I heard it, the shift in his tone at the end. But you need to stop making this bigger than it is. You're not a victim, Nora. You've always had a flair for drama. Click. That single sentence erased any doubt I still had. The next day, I started looking for apartments. I applied for a new job. Out of state. Somewhere quiet. I called a lawyer. I blocked his number. And for the first time, I said the words out loud, alone, to my reflection in the hotel mirror. He didn't help me because he never saw me as someone who needed help, just someone who got in the way. And I refused to let that be the ending. I didn't tell anyone when I left the hotel. I packed up early, took a bus instead of a cab, and moved into a sublet apartment 2 towns over. It was tiny with yellowing walls and creaky floors, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt safe. No one knew where I was except Ellie and Detective Harris. I needed it that way. Mark didn't stop after that voicemail. He called again 2 days later from a different number. Left another message. More apologetic this time, almost convincing. Then came the text messages. Dozens of them. I just want to talk. You're blowing this out of proportion. Please don't ruin my life over something that wasn't even real. That last one hit me in the gut. Wasn't even real. The pain, the bruises, the silence, he was trying to erase it all. Then Kayla texted. Kayla, he came to the house. Said you're trying to frame him. Nora, what's going on? I didn't answer right away. What could I say? That I finally saw through him? That I was terrified every time my phone rang? Instead, I sent her a photo. One I hadn't shown anyone yet. It was from the hospital. My arm, with a clear hand-shaped bruise along the inside. The nurse had taken it before the swelling faded. This is what he ignored. This is what he said was in my head. She didn't reply. But a few hours later, she sent one word. Kayla, I'm sorry. The following week, I started physical therapy. The therapist, a woman named Janelle, asked about the injury in the same gentle way as the doctor had. Was this a fall? Or something else? I hesitated. Then I told her. All of it. She didn't flinch. Just nodded and said, You're not the first. You won't be the last. But you are one of the brave ones. I cried in her office. I didn't want to be brave. I just wanted to be believed. That night, I got a call from Detective Harris. There's something you should know, he said. Another report came in. Different woman. Same pattern. Same name, Mark Lawson. I went cold. She never filed officially, he continued. But she gave us permission to connect the cases. You're not alone in this, Nora. We're building something. Just keep documenting everything. Stay where you are. We'll be in touch. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. It wasn't just me. It had never been just me. Mark had done this before. He probably thought he'd get away with it again. But this time there were receipts. There was a paper trail. There were people watching. I sent Ellie a message. Thank you. I'm not sure I'd be here without you. She responded right away. Ellie, you would. You just didn't know how strong you were yet. That night, I stood in the mirror again. Same face. Same bruises fading. But I saw someone different. I saw someone still here. Still standing. The days began to settle into a rhythm. Slow, quiet, and unfamiliar. I started waking up without dread in my chest. I began to eat again, to feel hunger and not just knots of anxiety. Healing wasn't linear. Some mornings, I stared at the ceiling for hours before I could move. Other days, I found myself laughing at a stupid sitcom, only to burst into tears moments later. But I was free. I'd filed for a legal separation. My lawyer, an older woman named Carol with kind eyes and a steel spine, handled the paperwork like it was second nature. She told me I had more rights than I thought. She told me I wasn't alone. Men like him count on silence, she said. You've already broken that. Mark didn't take it well. He sent one final email, long, manipulative, littered with guilt-tripping phrases and veiled threats. I never hurt you. You're ruining both our lives. Do you really want this to end like a crime drama? I forwarded it to Detective Harris. His response was swift. We're opening a formal investigation. You don't need to talk to him again. And I didn't. Kayla came to visit. She brought takeout and a flicker of remorse in her eyes. We sat on the floor of my tiny living room, eating cold noodles out of cartons, and she finally said what I needed to hear. I believed him because it was easier than believing I didn't know my own sister. I didn't say that's not good enough, because honestly, I'd spent years not knowing myself either. I nodded and said, I get it, but I know who I am now, and that was enough. The officer read my chart in that hospital room because someone finally saw what no one else wanted to. Because the system, flawed and slow as it is, still had space for my story. The day the official notice arrived, investigation open, temporary protective order granted. I sat alone in the sunlight, tracing the lines of my healing bruises. I was still in pain. My spine would always have weakness, but my voice had never been stronger. The final time I saw Mark was in a photo, on the front page of a small town blog after his name appeared in 2 separate reports. The caption read, "Community member under investigation for pattern of domestic neglect." I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't smile, but I did feel still, quiet inside, like the storm had passed. And as I stood there watching my reflection in the window of my new apartment, I whispered something I hadn't said out loud in months. I survived, and I would never be silent again.